wanna see the light.
Yo, welcome back to Alpha Omega University. Today we're going to be following up on what we actually started doing yesterday, on yesterday's episode, the Evolving Metas episode. Today is Evolving Metas Part 2. We're not going to actually talk about the metas themselves. That's what we did yesterday, right? But today what we're going to be focusing on is essentially what the changes in the game that have happened, but have still remained the same overall, where we're going to actually be able to look at how metas don't change because the game changes, but rather because of the fact that people change. The players themselves have a new idea about what we do and the skill level of players and especially the players on top, right? Like the best Zergs, the best players in the game at certain times will dictate and influence the meta. And it's not quite the game itself changing. It's not quite SBI making changes to like nerfing weapons or making certain weapons better or anything like that, right? So the point of today's stream is actually going to be about we're looking at different aspects of the game that have simply not changed, and also how we can exploit those things that don't change in the game, right? So we're going to be talking about just to remind you guys about yesterday, right? We went through a bunch of different metas, right? We went through the early release meta. That was like the pre-relic meta, right? We also talked about the early relic meta, so like right as soon as the relics got introduced, and how that kind of changed the entire landscape of ZvZ with the AoE weapons, right? Specifically like cam lands and siege bows and things like that, right? So that opened up a lot of avenues for different ways in which the game could continue with the use of AoE weapons. We moved on to a very big chunk, which was like 2018, 2020, something like that, which was the ranged warfare, right? Which was primarily caused by the necessity for guilds to want to fight in castles or for castles, right? So because there was this necessity for castles, it influenced the meta to shift towards a heavy ranged composition Zerg, right? That also laid the path for the bombs away meta, which is basically like the bomb squads, right? Where bomb squads reign supreme. And before that, bomb squads weren't a thing. And suddenly you had this thing called a bomb squad that now we see literally all over the field everywhere, right? Even small guilds have their bomb squads and stuff, right? So that's one of the big things that we focused on yesterday. Then we looked at the large scale warfare with like a heavy use of battle mounts, which is actually happening again right now, right? And a lot of people are getting upset about just the sheer number of battle mounts that are on the field. And then we finished up with the melee glory, which is the current meta, which is heavy melee compositions, right? And kind of like what brought that into the fold, right? Certain guilds left the game, players left the game, but also certain players with certain play styles became better. They got to the top of the game, I guess you can say. They became the top callers, they became the top players, and they influenced the entirety of the game, right? So before we get into the real nitty gritty, right? Make sure you guys hit the follow button because it helps me a lot. And if you guys at any point in time have any questions about anything that I'm talking about, make sure you guys drop it in the chat, and I will respond to you guys as soon as I see it, right? So the very first part that I'm going to talk about is the parts in the game that have stayed the same, right? So the same game. We've literally been playing the same game for years, right? 5.5, almost 6 years now. We've been playing the same exact game, even though it feels like it's a totally different game. And especially those people that say, oh no, like those are old mentalities. Those are old ways of doing things. Well, those people don't understand that the game has not changed, right? So one of the first things that has not changed in all this time from since 2018, right? It didn't start at the very beginning of the game, but this was figured out around 2018, around the middle of 2018, and it's continued on until now, and it has not changed. And that's the timing engages, right? That's the 30-second engage. Right now, when I say 30 seconds, I know it's fluid, right? Like there's some like 27, 28, second engages, right? Like it's kind of like around that time. But the main point is that the engage is timed together, right? The entire Zerg fights at the same timing, right? Everybody is essentially engaging the same enemy at the same time and having the cooldowns that match each other, right? So like my weapon is 30 seconds, but my ally to my right is E weapon is 30. My ally to my left is fucking 30-second engage, right? So that every single time that we engage together, we're gonna engage again and again and again together because we're gonna get our cooldowns back together, right? That timing engage mentality was developed around 2018, right? And it's continued on until now. And some people will say, oh, well, no, it's not, because now we have Zergs engaging in 2 different timers, right? Yo, what's up, Latorian? Some Dumb is your lover. Yeah, hey man, he has a lot of videos. He actually gave me a lot of these videos that we have on today, from his perspective and stuff too. So it's nice. But anyway, so the timing engage, right? So a lot of people go and say, oh, well, right now we have callers going in and calling 2 separate cooldowns, right? 2 separate Zergs, I guess you can say, 2 separate cooldowns, right? And they'll be like, oh, well, like first party engage, and then they wait a few seconds, and then they're like, oh, and then everybody else engage, right? And they're like, oh, well, that means that it's not a 30-second engage. No, you're still doing a 30-second engage because that first party is still engaging every 30 seconds, right? Now, just because the entire Zerg is engaging at different cooldowns with 2 different quote unquote fronts, right, does not mean that the Zerg as a whole is actually engaging at a different timing, right? The engages per player are still 30 seconds. No matter what, right? And again, it's like 26, 27, 28 seconds. If the caller's really bad or the situation's not too good, it's going to be more like 31, 32 seconds, right? But that's just the way it is, right? That has not changed. In the game, it has not changed. People have tried to change it many times where they're like, oh, we're going to run like 20-second cooldown weapons. And it doesn't work. And a big part of it is because there's not a lot of weapons that are 20-second cooldown, right? People have tried to do things like, oh, we're going to add a shitload of assassin hoods, right? Everybody's going to run assassin hood. So that way we can engage on like a 15-second cooldown type, right? Something like that. It doesn't work. And the reason for that one is, even though they all have the same timing for the engages and the same timing for their cooldowns, the reason that one doesn't work is because when you channel your assassin hood, some people don't do the full channel because they get interrupted, right? Or some people, like, they channel it at different times, or you engage and then you're backing up, and as you're backing up, some people are already channeling but you're still backing up, and so you channel like 1 or 2 seconds later, and that completely distorts the entire Zerg's fluency in the fight to be able to engage the next time together. So it forces the caller to have to wait a few extra seconds for those people to catch up. And those few extra seconds, you're basically saying, oh, you go from 20, you go to like 25, 26, 27. You're getting into the same range as if you didn't have the assassin hood in the first place. So it no longer matters, right? So timing engages is something that has not changed at all in the game, right? People have tried to change it. It just hasn't changed, okay? Another thing that has not changed in the game is chokes. I mean, it's super simple, right? Chokes exist in the game. They've existed forever, right? And they're going to continue to exist. I mean, they're a primary part of the game. This is super simple. I mean, a choke, if you're fighting an open world, like in an open ground, versus you fight on a choke, you're gonna fight differently. That's just what's gonna happen. Like, if you don't fight differently on a choke than open world, then you're making a mistake, right? So essentially, chokes have, for the most part, remained the same. Some chokes are like fucking, narrow bridges, right? Some chokes are like, bigger areas, but they're still chokes, right? Because they kind of compress the Zerg that's on each side, right? But no matter what, the chokes have always existed in this game, and being able to utilize those chokes has been an extremely important part of ZvZing, right? If you see a choke as a DPS, you have to stand in a certain direction rather than if you're in open world, right? And that part of the game has not changed at all, right? Another part of the game that has not changed is the angles, right? So when I talk about angles, I want you to think about kind of like the camera, right? Like if you look at the actual camera that you view your character with, the camera is actually tilted up a little bit, right? So you can actually see north a little bit farther than you can see south, right? So that means that the best possible angle you can have on an enemy is if you're south of them and they're north of you, right? Because then you get to see a lot more of them than they get to see a lot of you, right? So basically, being able to exploit angles in this game has always been a thing, like from the start of the game, and it continues on to be a very important thing. But a lot of people, when they go in ZvZ, they kind of switch their brain off, right? They're just like, oh yeah, I see the enemy over there, I'm gonna do this. And it's like, no, you gotta pay attention to the angles, because the angle will allow you to view your enemy a lot farther away. And if you can see your enemy from a lot farther away, you're able to respond to them much better, right? Angles is an extremely important part of the game that has gone completely unchanged. And honestly, I think it's one of the most one of the biggest parts of the game that will not change, right? There are some things like chokes, they might change a little bit here and there, and they have changed a little bit. Some are bigger, smaller, whatever. But angles, the camera itself is not going to change. I mean, if it can change at some point, then man. Hey, yo, what's up, Flaco? Get magic pen. I'm gonna look into it. I have no idea what that is. I assume it's like I can draw and shit on the stream. Let me know if that's what okay, all right. Yeah, I'll look into it. I definitely don't know a lot of this kind of stuff, man, so that helps a lot. I'll look at it. So basically the angles are not going to change, right? And that's something that if you're a player in ZvZ and you kind of just look at things and you're like, damn, how can I improve, right? You're like, I'm doing all the quote unquote right things, right? Or you can't really tell what it is that you're doing wrong. Well, I'll tell you, like, if you just focus on angles, that's one of the first things that you can actually like focus on and get better at very quickly, because you simply have to just look at the enemy and make sure that you can see the enemy farther than they can see you, which means take the south angle more, take the side angles, right? Like if you're east to west with the enemy, you can kind of see a little bit farther out, right, to the east side versus like looking south, like towards the bottom of your screen. So if the enemy's to the right of your screen or the left of your screen, it's much better than if you see them like straight below you, right? And that's simply because of, again, the screen angle. So that's another thing to like look at, where the game has not changed, but yet metas keep changing, right? But the game has stayed the same. So another part is the hills, right? Hill advantage. Hills have been around the game since literally day one, right? So hills are extremely important to the game, and a lot of people don't take advantage of them, right? Like I can't tell you how many fucking times we try to push up a whole fucking hill with a whole Zerg, and like we outnumber the enemy and everything. Like it's great. And we try to just push completely straight up a hill, and suddenly we just get fucking decimated, right? We can't make it up the hill. And the reason is simple, is because we cannot see the enemy. We literally just see their name tags, but we don't see their movement. We don't see if they're getting prepared to like counter us. We don't see if you're like a disengaged tank, you see the enemy engaging on you, you gotta jump at them, right? You gotta stop them. But you're not gonna see that until they're literally in your fucking face hitting you, because you have that hill that is as a disadvantage if you're below it. But if you're on top of the hill, then that's a completely separate issue, right? So if you're on top of that hill, then guess what? Suddenly you have that advantage, and you know that you can see the enemy. And not only can you see the enemy, because you're on that hill, the game actually allows you to see even further, right? So not only can you see like the enemy in front of you, but you can see even further behind the enemy than you would if you were on normal ground. Those two things right there are huge, because the enemy can't see you, and you have a greater advantage as if you were on both the same ground. You exploit that advantage, and then suddenly it's like like the enemy can't do it. It doesn't matter how good the caller is, how good the enemy Zerg is. If you exploit hills properly, the enemy will never know what the fuck you're doing, and it's just that simple, right? Lambo's asking, is spike bomb still good? Man, I'm still dying to it. So yeah, I mean, it's good. The thing about spike gauntlets, right? I know they nerfed them, and a lot of people, since they nerfed them, they kind of fell out of it, right? But the truth is spike gauntlets are the only extremely reliable weapon to delete tanks. That's just the truth, right? So when you think about all the weapons in the entire fucking game, there's not a lot of weapons that you can say, oh yeah, this is extremely reliable to deal with enemy tanks. I mean, there's like things like Siege Bow, right? Siege Bow are pretty good against tanks, but beyond that, there's nothing else, right? So spike gloves are extremely good because you can actually add a new facet to the game, where now you have like let's say like a spiked gauntlet bomb squad, and you play front to back. Just imagine that, right? You play front to back, and you kill all the fucking enemy tanks in a few engages, and they will die because the spike fucking gloves do a shitload of damage to tanks. And after you kill their tanks, then you just run into the enemy and just run them down, because they don't have tanks to stop you. They can no longer stop you. And with this current meta, the melee meta, the spike gauntlet like bomb squad is brutal, because the spike gauntlets destroy the tanks, and then suddenly you have this full force of melee who just runs inside the enemy, and there's nothing the enemy can do. Because if a melee heavy Zerg gets inside of the enemy, that's it. It's over. It's basically GG, right? So what does the enemy have to do? They have to stop you from getting inside of them. But if you kill their tanks, how are they going to do that? They can't. It's just that simple. So yeah, like the thing about it is, a lot of people just don't know how to use it in that sense, because both the bomb squad leader of the spike gauntlet group has to know that the strategy is to play front to back, and the caller of the main Zerg also has to know that. They kind of have to talk about this and kind of get an agreement with it, right? And honestly, I don't see a lot of that. I kind of see more like spike bombs being used like a regular bomb squad. And in fact, it's horrible, because a lot of times I see spike bombs literally come in and hit the backline of enemies. And it's like, yeah, you get some kills, but you're not doing, you're doing the opposite of what you should be doing. You should be playing front to back, right? To use that advantage. Yo, what's up, Ultra? Yo, where you at now, Ultra? What guild? You've been hopping, man. You've been hopping. It's Locals asking, how do you spike bomb squad when they don't stack? So the thing about it, the spike bomb squad, right? So it can't be every single fucking player spiked, right? But on top of it, it's like it doesn't stack, but there's some time in between, right? And then from what I've seen, sometimes I don't know if this is a bug or a fucking SBI feature, right? But sometimes they do hit you back to back and it triggers. So I think that the timing trigger between like the tick, right, of when they don't quote unquote stack and when they do, I think that tick is like actually really like small, right? And it kind of I think it might be like on the interval of the enigmatic, which the enigmatic, if you think about it, it's like it ticks and it ticks and it ticks, right? It's like 3 times per second, some shit like that, or maybe twice per second. No, I'm pretty sure it's 3 times per second. So if you have a bomb squad is supposed to be able to time things properly, right? Because they're more individualistic. So yeah, I mean, it's not as easy as a regular bomb squad, but you're gonna delete tanks. Like, that's just the fact, right? And then also, you don't have to just have pure bombs, pure spike. Like, honestly, if you have 3 and they're beamed, any tank's gonna die. Like, I think even 2 beamed spike gloves are gonna kill any tank, unless they got like fucking 8-4 masterpiece or some shit. Ultra's asking, what's your opinion on demon armor heavy comps? They're shit. They're shit. Here's the thing. Demon armor is a extremely controversial armor. Okay, it's an extremely controversial armor. The reason it's controversial is because of what it does. It's really good at like reflecting right against like enemy bombers or just any enemy engage, and the resistances are very good. They are. But I want you to not think about what it does in the terms of like fighting against the enemy, but I want you to think of the demon armor as instead of what it does to you as the user of the demon armor. And when I ask that, people are just always like, oh, well, the demon armor, like, yeah, it's going to reduce my resistances, but if we have multiple demon armors, then it counteracts and then we're good. That's not what I'm talking about. Everybody's missing the piece where demon armor is forcing you to channel, right? And people think, oh, well, it's uninterruptible channel, so it's great. No, because when you're channeling that shit, who's channeling it, right? If you have like a support doing it, like say like a Locust or something like that, right? Then okay, I don't mind it that much. But if you're having fucking tanks do that, where a tank is fucking channeling a demon armor, you know what the tank is not doing? The tank is not looking at the enemy front line, looking to stop them, right? The enemy's not throwing fucking Qs and Ws at the enemy and setting up rings like if they're a Grove Keeper. The tank is not getting in position to be able to get the best clump or get the best fucking disengage, right? And in fact, what does the tank have to do? Because with the demon armor, you have to position yourself inside of your own Zerg. So when I see, like, especially disengaged tanks running demon armor, like, that's so counterintuitive, because if the enemy's engaging, you shouldn't be standing inside your Zerg. Because another thing that people forget is that if you go and like stand inside your Zerg to reflect, you know what else you're doing? You're escalating the enemy damage. Right? No matter what, like, oh, I reflected or whatever. Yeah, sure. But you're also adding to their fucking damage. If you simply take yourself out of that equation and you're just not there, and instead you're over there stopping the enemy engage, right? Then suddenly you reduce the escalation that you'd be adding by popping demon armor inside of your own Zerg, but you're also stopping some of their engage, right? So the problem with demon armor, it's not necessarily that it's just bad in general and nobody should use it. No. That's not what I'm saying. Demon armor is good. It has a role. It's the most reliable way of dealing with like Galatine claps, to be honest, right? But the problem with demon armor is that people have a fucking fad in their head about demon armor, and they think that demon armor just has to be the thing. Like, you just have to play demon armor and everybody has to play demon armor. And that's so wrong, because if you look at the history of all the players in the game, I have no idea what we're watching. Hold on. Let me put up the next video here. Oh, the next video is with Blue Dawn, talking about fucking Galatine clappers, man. Oh, there it is. Look at that. Fucking sick ass Galatine. So, basically, if you look at the history of all the metas and all the successful strong guilds in the game, almost every single one of them had this exact same feature. They all were able to survive engages from the enemy. Now, you might say, oh, okay, yeah, well, that's obvious. Yeah, it's obvious, but how are they doing it? And that's the key, right? How are they doing it? And the thing is the majority use Judicator armors. And the reason for Judicator armor, although the resistance that Judicator gives is less than the resistance that Demon armor gives, the Judicator allows you to drop it. Your allies see it and walk into it for defensives. Not only that, it increases the heal amount that you get for your entire Zerg. And realize, if you don't have if you don't have enough Judicator armors on the ground to rotate them the entire fight, which means you need to have a lot, right? So if you don't have enough, what's gonna happen is you're gonna have gaps where suddenly your Zerg is not gonna get healed all the way as much as they could. Why? Because everybody during a ZvZ, you're getting fucking healing debuff, right? Like, I forget what the fuck that shit's called, but you're getting the healing debuff. And so when you're getting that fucking healing debuff, what's gonna happen is you're reducing the total amount of heals that your entire Zerg gets, and you're making yourself way more prone to just being counter engaged multiple times until you die. And so when you see Zergs backing up, right, and you see Zergs getting like pressured so hard that they're backing up and they're backing up and they're backing up, and they're not ever able to just stabilize. The main reason is because they don't have Judicator armors. That's what the number one stabilization thing in this game is. It's Judicator armors, but people don't like it. People like fucking Demon armor. And the thing about Demon armor is, you know, you're channeling it, so you're useless during the channel, right? So anyway, I'm gonna move on because we spent a lot of time there. But the next thing that has not changed in this game, right, is the ridges and the walls, right? So like any wall, like say like a territory wall, like a ridge on a hill, right? Like the side ridges, even like big boulders, right? They're technically walls. Like, think about them. Like the big rocks on the ground, big fucking trees and shit. They're all walls. That's just the way the game views it. Even like rivers and stuff like that, right? Those things have not changed. Like, those exist in the game. They've changed in their location and stuff, but they have remained the same, as in the sense that it's always been around and it will continue to be around forever. So essentially, the ridges and walls, what you have to do is you have to acknowledge that these ridges and walls exist, and therefore you need to plan out how exactly to use them to your advantage. So for example, like let's see if I like, okay, look at the example we're watching right now in the video, right? We're watching Blue Dawn, right? And look at how the wall, I mean, this is an extreme case scenario, right? But look at the walls and how it's forcing the enemy to engage over the northwest wall, and then how they don't have any space to the far east, right? You can exploit that because it makes people clump in certain areas. Now, this is obviously an extreme fucking example, right? But the truth is this happens in every single fight, even if it's open world. The most minuscule, like, fucking tree will cause people to clump, even if it's just a little bit of clumping. Just pay attention to the way people move when they are walking in a straight line, and then suddenly there's a little fucking rock, and then everybody goes either left of it or right of it, and now you got people clumping on the right and people clumping on the left, right? If it's a bigger rock or a bigger tree and shit, that's more evident, right? But what I'm saying is you need to learn to exploit that, but at the same time, you need to be able to not be exploited by it. If you see an obstacle, forward of you and you're walking straight at it, you need to make a decision on which direction you're gonna go a lot sooner than right when you walk into the fucking rock, and then you're forced to literally hug that rock with 10 other of your allies and then get clapped on that rock, right? I can't tell you how many fucking Zergs have died just because of splitting on a ridge. Actually, today, I think it was the 21 UTC fight today, Terra versus Triple X, right? If you were there in the fight, or if you saw the fight or whatever, you'll know what I'm talking about. So in one of the fights, Triple X was getting pushed back, right? And they were northwest of the territory in Fire Sing Trench. So if you got the game up, you can pull up the thing. And so northwest of the territory, on the kind of like the north side a little bit more, there's a ridge wall. And Triple X was west of that ridge wall. And when they walked east, they didn't notice they were walking into that ridge. And so the caller said, we're going to go north and up on the hill, right? But some people were already going east down the hill on the ridge, right? So the Zerg was already getting split in two. So because of that, the call was made, we're going to go on the north side of the ridge. And what happened was the Zerg that was going on the south side, they turned around, they walked back, right? So they walked back through the choke, hugging that wall. They clumped so hard. Well, when Terra engaged, they hit that corner, that ridge corner, and killed like 20 dudes in one engage, right? And the thing is, it's like, this doesn't take like really good callers to do. This is just what the enemy put themselves in that situation for, and this is how important things like ridges are. From then on forward, Triple X couldn't stabilize, and they lost the fight, right? And it's just that simple. Something so easy as just ridges, right? And the guys that went to the south of that ridge, and then the caller was like, no, we gotta go north. Those guys that went south, they made a mistake. They should have just gone east and met up around with the Zerg some other way. But their choice of going back through that ridge, hugging that fucking ridge, and clumping with all their allies, that's what lost them that fight. Right? And it's very easy to just say, oh, well, this happened or that happened. But the truth is it just comes down to something so simple and so basic that we all don't take too much account of. And when we're playing, we have to look at these walls and ridges in the game, because they really, really influence the space that we have available to ZvZ. So another thing that hasn't changed in the game at all is the importance of range DPS, right? And this one's very simple to explain, because I spent quite a bit of time talking about walls and ridges, right? So think about it. If you're on one side of the fucking wall ridge and the enemy's on the other side, you need a range DPS to be able to shoot that, right? Like, in fact, in a later fight today as well, 21 UTC, it was after, Triple X was walking on the southeast side of the territory outside, right? and Terra was on the inside. And if Triple X had a lot of range DPS, they could have bombed over the wall and killed literally almost everybody, right? But they didn't. In fact, they had the majority of melee DPS. They tried to bomb over the wall anyway, right? The caller made the call. We're going to bomb over the wall because that was the right call, because that was the right thing to do. And only like 4 DPS ended up hitting. Why? Because they don't have the range DPS. They have fucking millies. They have so many melee DPS that suddenly, by simply not having enough range DPS, you're fucking yourself out of the situations that you could take advantage of by shooting over walls, shooting over ridges, even fighting on chokes and stuff. It's so important. Range DPS is so important, and that has not changed. Now, I know that we're living in a melee heavy meta, but range DPS is still extremely important. And even the people that like with the melee zergs, they hate fighting in territories. Why? Because they get dunked. There's nothing they can do. They're completely useless in a territory or in a castle. They're absolutely useless. So range DPS will continue to be extremely important. The entire game will not change to make range DPS not important, right? So that's another thing that has not changed in the game. And again, metas change regardless of that, right? So the last thing that is very important in the game that has not changed is the scouting information and how important scouting information is. And this one kind of goes back to the angles and the like the screen, right? How you can view the camera, right, from your perspective. Here, give me a second. Let me start the next video. By the way, if anybody has any questions about anything that I'm saying, just make sure you drop it in the chat and I'll address it. Give me a second here. All right, so Ultra saying, what about clump tanks, run breaker only, or offensive locusts, not players who should be using their skills whilst enemies engaging? Oh yeah. Like you're talking about the demon armor. Yeah. So yeah, like if it makes sense, such as like supports and stuff, right? Like certain supports, like people who are not necessarily in charge of disengaging the enemy, right? Then that demon armor would go well in those roles, right? But it for the majority of the Zerg, it's not good. So scouting info is really important, and it always has been. But the thing is that people didn't acknowledge how important scouting information it was until like the last 2, maybe 3 years, right? The thing about scouting information is that, think about it, the caller can only see his screen, and that's it. Like he can't see beyond the screen, just like everybody else, right? He's limited by the constructs of the game. And because of that, giving information on the enemy ahead of time to the caller to make better decisions is extremely important. It always has been important. And finally, people are adopting scouting more now, right? But there are still some Zergs in the game that just decide like, oh no, I don't need scouts, or it's not that important. Or even worse so, like certain guilds are like telling their members, yo, we need scouts. And nobody's ever willing to fucking do it. Nobody's ever willing to be like, yeah, I'll mount up, run around and fucking give you information on the Zerg so that we can succeed together, right? There's so many people who just think it's so useless and it's so unimportant that they don't take advantage of it. And guess what? Because you're not taking advantage of it, suddenly the enemy is able to get hill advantage on you, or suddenly the enemy is able to get like screen advantage on you, right? Or suddenly they have a better choke, or they have a better angle, or they have a whatever, right? And all of these things that I mentioned from like literally the last like 20 minutes is literally all things that have to do with scouting information. And if you have better scouting information, the likely chances is you're gonna have an advantage over the enemy, right? These are all things that have not changed in the game. What has changed is our perspective of them, right? And with the changes in our perspective of them, the metas have evolved, right? The metas have changed over time because we as players have become more knowledgeable about these things. But it doesn't mean that these things have been changed by SBI, right? And it also doesn't mean that the lessons that we learned about these things and the way they influence the way we view the game, it doesn't mean that that's quote unquote old ways, right? A lot of people think that it's like, oh, well, that's an old play style, like playing range DPS. That's an old play style. It's like, no, it's not. It's a different play style, right? It doesn't mean it's better or worse, but you're taking advantage of certain things while not taking advantage of others. And you have to know which one of these you're taking advantage of in order to have the best chances to succeed in the ZvZ. And this is not just like calling, this is not just leadership, this is individual players, right? Like if you're like a Demon Fang player and that's all you play, and then suddenly your caller's like, yo, we're gonna go do fucking castles. And you're like, yeah, I'm gonna bring us a Demon Fang. It's like, why? Why? Like, do you want to be useless? Do you want to just be extra debuff for your team? Like, you might as well not show up. Get a fucking longbow, get a fucking brimstone, a siege bow, right? Get something that shoots over walls because you know you're gonna encounter walls. It's just that simple, right? Now, having a few like melee DPS, like in a castle fight and stuff, it helps, right? I'm not saying it's completely like you should have zero. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is that the majority of the Zerg should be ranged if you're going to like a castle or territory fight, right? That's the things that you guys got to pay attention to. So now we're gonna move on to the part where I'm going to explain how the players themselves have changed the metas, right? So I just explained how the game, SBI, right? Albion has not changed. Now I'm going to explain how the players themselves have changed the metas. And I already explained a little bit, but I'm gonna kind of go one by one with all of these, right? So the different styles. So hold on. Dennis is saying Siege is really underrated in my opinion. The Q pressure is so big. Yeah, it is. And here's the thing, man. They made a Siege bow even better. And people are starting to pick it up, but it's still taking a while for people to actually believe in it. It's insane. Like Siege bow is a fucking like almost it's like on the verge of OP. It's not quite OP, but it's on the verge of OP, right? And that Q pressure is so important because again, people forget the lessons of the past. And this is exactly why I started with these 2 episodes about the evolving metas, is because people are forgetting the lessons of the past, right? The Q pressure is so important to ensure that the enemy doesn't get inside of you. Now people are not running siege bows, they're not running brimstones to have that Q pressure. So what's happening is Zergs are able to walk into your Zerg for free. And they know they're not going to get queued down to death. They know they won't. So they do it anyway. Well, guess what? Why do you think melee, like a melee composition back in the day, why do you think that shit didn't work? Like a full-blown melee like Zerg. Why did that shit didn't work the way it's working now? The simple answer is because the majority of the fucking game ran siege bows and brimstones. So if you as a melee try to walk into an enemy Zerg, you get queued down to hell, man. Right? You couldn't do that. You just couldn't do that. Right? But people nowadays, they literally just walk into each other and walk out of each other and nobody dies. It's fun. It's weird as fuck. It's hilarious, man. But people keep doing it. I don't understand it. People keep doing it, right? People don't understand the metas and they don't understand the lessons of the past. So moving on to the different styles, right? The different styles that players play, right? So one of them is the pressure push, right? So the pressure push is a style where you kind of walk into the enemy and you're slowly like pushing them with Qs and Ws, you're auto attacking them, you're kind of pushing them with positioning, right? Like if you ever see like fucking players in Albion are like cockroaches, man. Like you walk close to one of them and they suddenly just like start sprinting somewhere else, right? Like it's crazy as shit. But that's exactly what pressure push is, right? You're applying pressure by simply walking slowly into the enemy lines, right? But you're not actually walking into the enemy, you're just walking closer to them, and that slowly forces them to walk backwards, right? That's just what happens. Like I said, it's like people are like cockroaches, man. And so what happens is like with the pressure push, you just walk your enemy into the chokes that you want to walk them to, right? You see a fucking choke behind them and you just slowly walk them into it. You never use your fucking E, and all these fucking Zergs that just play counter engage, they're like, I'm gonna wait till they engage and then I'm gonna counter them and fucking kill them, right? And then a pressure push Zerg is just walking them, and then the other guy's like, when are you gonna engage? Why haven't you engaged? You should be engaging me. And then they finally see, oh shit, we're in a choke, and then they get engaged on. They can't counter. They're just dead because they walked themselves into a fucking choke, right? And it all happened because of Qs, Ws, auto attacks, and simple positioning. That's just what it is, right? Pressure push is the most simple thing that was made in this game from very early on that people today don't really do anymore. Right? Again, the mentality shifted, right? Not the game, it's the mentality that shifted. So another thing that people are doing a lot right now is sword engages, right? So think about a sword engage kind of like okay, so like a sword is this one kind of linear, very thin, right, direction, right? And so a sword engage is, if you look at engages, when a Zerg engages at a long distance, what do they inevitably do? They end up clumping together as they're engaging together, right? So essentially what's happening is because you're engaging all at the same exact direction, because again, you have this one clump that you're gonna engage on. You have 100 fucking people in your Zerg, and you tell people, I want every 100 fucking people of you to engage this one fucking clump. And listen, it might be a 15-man clump. It might be a 20-man clump. It might be great, right? And you might kill every single one of them. But it doesn't mean that's the right fucking thing to do, because the moment that you engage your entire Zerg into that tiny little fucking point on the entire map, right? What you're doing is you're putting your entire Zerg there, and the enemy that's spread out is gonna counter from every direction to that point, and you're gonna be fucked, right? So that's what's happening a lot right now, is the sword engages. So with another thing with the sword engages is that you're engaging from a distance. So you have to use your sprint at the full distance to be able to get to where you want to be, right? That also means that when you get there, you hit your clump, whatever, you can't get the fuck out. You're not going to get out. So a trained Zerg, a good Zerg, is going to watch you kill 20 other guys in that clump, and then they're going to fucking laugh, because they're going to be able to counter you and kill every single one of you guys, because you literally walked into them with a sprint, and now you have no way to get out, and you already blew your cooldowns, and sure, you killed 20 people, but it's an 100v100, and suddenly you have 80 people bearing down on your 50-man clump of your guys. Yeah, you're gonna die. And this is the thing, sword engages became very popular because of Great Arcane, right? The Great Arcane would basically see the big ass clump of your dudes and be like, I'm gonna save all of them, right? So you save all of them, and that's great. But now that it's gone, guess what? Now the mentality has to change, and sword engages are becoming less common because the mentality is changing. Right now, they did change Great Arcane, right? But at the same time, the Great Arcane had not been around forever, right? And the sword engages were already starting up. So sword engages are not bad. They're just specific. And when you use a sword engage for every engage, that's when it becomes a problem, right? So another thing is like the chokehold, right? Zergs that just hold the choke at all costs, no matter what, right? Like they just like, I'm gonna fucking hold this choke forever and just never move, right? That's a different style. And if you're gonna play that style, like if you're gonna be the caller that kind of decides, I'm gonna stand on this choke and I'm gonna hold it until I die, right? Then you need to make sure that your composition matches that, right? You got to make sure that you have range DPS, right? You got to make sure that you have like stopper tanks, like especially like you know, growth keepers with the rings, right? Because they're gonna slow down the enemy push, things like that. So holding the choke is very important for you. Then that means that you need to make sure that your composition benefits from that, right? Now, if you go and do like, oh yeah, I'm gonna hold chokes all the time, but I'm gonna run a melee comp, well, it's just counterintuitive. It just doesn't work, right? So these are all things that you need to think about. And again, it's not just as leadership, but also individual players, right? Like again, why would you run like a Raven Strike if you know that you're gonna be holding chokes? If you know you're gonna be fighting on small areas, why would you run a Raven Strike in that scenario, right? The next thing is like turn and burn, right? And that's what we call the kiting, right? Where you turn, you're kiting back, and then suddenly you turn around and you hit the guys that are right in the front, just 2-3 tanks maybe, and then you back up again, right? And you keep doing it over and over and over. So for those compositions, what do you need more of? You need more of like Grail Seekers, right? You need more of like people that can slow down, like icicles, right? You need that kind of stuff, right? So if you don't have those things, and that's the way you want to play kite composition, but you're not going to run Grail Seekers and icicles, then you're doing yourself a disservice. You're at a disadvantage because you're playing the wrong strategy with the Zerg that you have, right? So either change the Zerg or change the strategy. But a lot of people, they play strategies that don't match the Zerg they're running, right? Another strategy is the flood, right? That's the one that mostly escalation tends to do, right? Flooding, where they just kind of run into the enemy and they get inside of the enemy. You hear it all the time when like you watch Del Negro calling, like he'll say like, you know, run them down, run them down, run them down, right? Like, or he'll say like get inside of them or whatever, right? So that flood style, it's very good for having a melee Zerg. The problem is that Escalation runs a burst Zerg. They don't run a brawl Zerg. So if they were to run inside of an enemy that has primarily a brawl type Zerg, so like a bruiser type Zerg, right? That has a lot of like halberds or you know, swords with the new W, axes in general that give bleeds, right? Or dots, then they're gonna slowly die. All the enemy has to do is survive the big engages, and beyond that, I mean, the Zerg is just slowly gonna wither away, right? And you'll see in the big fights that they end up losing because they go inside the enemy and they're not able to actually kill the enemy, right? The enemy had good defenses or whatever, and they slowly die one by one. Like you can watch the fucking party just die one by one. So that's what happens. So again, every strategy has pros and cons, right? Rotations is another one where Zergs like to fucking like, they'll hit you one way and then they just run to a whole different place and they hit you again, right? These kinds of Zergs try to rely on speed, right? And they try to create chaos on the enemy, where it's kind of like you hit them from one direction, so then the disengaged tanks rotate to that direction. But by the time the disengaged tanks rotate to that direction, you're already sprinting, using fucking occult staffs, using beetle speed boosts and arcane cleanses to speed your Zerg up, and you're suddenly on the opposite side, and now you're engaging them from the opposite side, right? And people think that you can only do this with like secondary Zergs and stuff like that, but no, you can do this with the main Zerg. You just got to be fast. That's all it is. You got to be fast enough to do it with the main Zerg. But if you're able to accomplish it, every single time you engage, you're going to hit the enemy back line, right? But yes, it's a hard one to do. Another one is like bait and switch, right? So bait and switch is kind of like what is going on right now when they go and they split the Zerg into two, right? So they'll have like a lot of people go and engage with the first party. Right? They'll engage with the first party, and then they wait until the enemy full counters on that first party, and then they full counter with the rest of the Zerg. Right? That's like a bait and switch. You're baiting them with that first Zerg, and then you're switching it up on them with the rest of your Zerg. Because of that, this type of style of calling actually has created Zergs that have a very strong first party. Right? Now, when I say strong, I'm talking about DPS output, right? When bait and switch is used, you need a first party that can give a strong enough engage to actually make the enemy feel like, oh my god, that was a full engage, or oh, I should completely counter on this, right? If the first party goes and engages and doesn't get any kills, or doesn't even do that much damage in general, nobody's gonna take the bait, right? And so what this causes is it causes Zergs to focus on high DPS output weapons, right? But it all depends at how good their skill is too. I mean, if they don't hit it, or they hit it late, or they don't get the kills, or they don't get the DPS on there, then suddenly your little bait just became a waste of cooldowns for 20 people, right? Now you have 20 less people to engage with your full cooldown. So the last one of the different styles that people use that create metas is the in and out counter engage, right? So basically it's like you go into the enemy, you engage into the enemy, and you basically just kind of hit the front line, right? And then you get the fuck right back, right? You get out. So you're in, you hit them, you get out, right? And then you make the enemy chase you. And as they're chasing into you, they're only gonna kill the few stragglers in that were too slow. And so then you're gonna have cooldowns before them, right? So this is where the counter engage comes in. So it's very similar to the bait and switch, but instead of using a small part of your Zerg, you're actually baiting with the whole Zerg, and then you're gonna have cooldowns before them, right? So that's what the counter engage type styles are, and that kind of leads to metas that like basically allow for mobility, right? But at the same time allow for staggering the enemy. So you want like Grail Seekers, you want Icicles, right? But at the same time, you want things like firewalls, right, to help stagger the enemy even more, right? Those kinds of things lead to those metas. And basically what I'm saying is, whatever style that the quote unquote best callers in the game, or the quote unquote best Zergs in the game, right, whatever style they choose to do, that's what eventually turns to meta. Why? Because it works for them. So then everybody goes and copies it, right? Saying, oh, it works for them, so it's got to work for me, right? So then they copy it, and then they go and do the same thing, and it doesn't work for them, right? Or sometimes it does, or they force themselves to learn this quote unquote meta, right? But what the problem is that you don't understand the reasoning for it. So now you have like a caller, like let's say just think of like a small guild that, I don't know, like masses, I don't know, maybe like a medium-sized guild that masses like 50, 60 people, right? And they mass 50, 60 people, and they're like, yeah, the meta is this. We got to run melees, and we got to just do this or whatever. Okay, so then they run melees and everything, but their caller prefers to play chokes, right? So then the caller has this full melee Zerg that plays chokes, and then they wonder, why am I losing? Well, you're losing because you're copying metas that don't work for you. They don't work for your Zerg, or they don't work for your caller. And so you're giving yourself a disadvantage from the moment you literally leave the hideout, right? These are the things that we need to pay attention to in order to get better at ZvZ. It's not just, this is the meta, I gotta copy it, this is what works, this is what it has to do. No, metas are created by people. They're not created by the game. The game doesn't change weapons and then suddenly it's the meta for a long time. No, even when Damnation meta was like huge because the Damnation was like so OP, how long did that last? 3 months? Like, I actually think it was like 2.5 months, right? 2.5 months. So you spent 2.5 months teaching your Zerg to rely on that one thing, and then suddenly now your Zerg is absolute dog shit because that's all your Zerg knows how to do, and it got taken away. This is why you don't just copy metas. You got to look at every individual play style and every individual thing that works for your guild, that works for your personal play style, and then choose to do what you're going to do, right? So because of these different styles, metas have come out, and the types of metas that have come out have been like bomb squads, right? Especially bomb squads when Zergs have like 10 DPS who are really good and the rest of the Zergs DPS are just absolute garbage. Then suddenly putting those 10 DPS into a bomb squad, or maybe 2 different bomb squads, that seems to be the best option, right? And then let the rest of the Zerg that doesn't play that well be as part of the main Zerg that's not going to do much at all, right? And so that kind of style to meta matching is really important, and that's what has propagated the use of bomb squads, right? Same thing with like melee heavy or ranged heavy bombs, or not bomb squads, like compositions, right? Ranged or melee compositions. The tank or support heavy, right? Certain Zergs have valued like survivability really highly, right? So when they value survivability really highly, suddenly they're like, oh yeah, tanks and supports, very important. I have to stay with, I have to make sure that we have a lot of tanks, we have a lot of supports, and we just always stay alive. Yeah, we're not gonna kill shit because our DPS is garbage, but at least we're gonna stay alive, right? That's a different style. So there's a lot of different styles that have influenced the game over time, and it all starts from the leadership of individual guilds, not from the people that are doing things that work, right? Such as like the top guilds. Like you look at Black Order, you look at like Escalation, or you might look at Flow, or you might look at whatever, right? You got to look at your guild and what works for you guys. So the next thing is basically what is happening right now is that people are just following the leader, right? Now, before I get into that, let me put another video here. I got a video by Occulto here. That dude makes some sick ass videos, man. He's got good content. So the next part is following the leader, right? So that's basically what everybody's doing, is they're just following the leader. They see, oh, the best Zerg in the game is doing this, right? Escalation is doing melee heavy, so then that means melee heavy is the best thing right now. That doesn't mean that it's the best thing right now. It just means that that's what works for them, right? You can become the best Zerg in the game by doing something completely different, and then guess what? That's going to become meta, right? Because if you do it and you become the best Zerg in the game, that's going to become meta. But by the time that people go and switch to the meta, quote unquote meta, right, it's already starting to be too late, because just like Escalation was doing like super heavy melee compositions and you know, using a lot of like engaged mentality, like a lot of DPS, right, and not a lot of defensives, right? What happened is people started countering it. So now they're starting to run more Knight helmets. Now they're starting to run guard runes on the maces, right? These things are very important, but they didn't really need to run it before because people weren't countering it. But now that people are finally catching on to the meta, they're catching on to what Escalation's already leaving behind, right? And so people are like, oh, but that's the meta. That's what I got to do because that's what they're doing. And it's like, no. They're already changing, but you're too late, right? So you need to be looking forward, not at the people that are at the top right now, right? Basically what I'm saying is you got to stop blindly following different styles. Every style has a strength and weakness. You have to look at those strengths and weaknesses, right? At the end of the day, you're going to fail a lot, right? You're going to fail a lot with the different metas that come out and the different styles that you decide to play. You're going to fail a lot. Everybody does. Everybody that gets to the top has failed many times to get there because they've tried different things, right? The reason this style works for like, say like a flow, right? Let's say they do a certain style and it works really well for them and you're like, oh my God, I got to copy it, right? It's like, okay, but you got to realize they failed at that style many times until they were able to figure out the exact composition that they need in order to make it work, right? So that's basically all I'm saying about like following the leader, right? Ultraviolence is saying, I don't know why nobody is off clapping on cooldown with multiple siege bows, spike gauntlets on the front line tanks right now. Why nobody is off clapping on cooldown? What do you mean? Not spite squads, just lots of solo. Oh, like there's you're saying like there's not a lot of solo clappers? Yeah, no, there's. I mean, okay. So here's the thing, right? It depends on how you view it, right? Because if you think, oh, like there's not a lot of like solo clapping going on, okay, but you're comparing it to what, right? Because at a certain point, like in like 2021 or so, 2020, there were a lot of solo clappers, right? Way more than now. But if you compare right now to like even just 1 year ago, to be honest, there's more solo clappers now than there was like a year ago. I think a lot of the thing about like solo clapping is that a lot of it used to be with Galatines. And the thing about it is a lot of people right now are running demon armor, right? We were talking about demon armor earlier, but a lot of people are running demon armor right now. And because of that, solo clapping is kind of a suicidal right now, right? Like it's not really that great, right? Like you're going to end up dying to the demon armor. And you're not going to get much done. So because there's so many demon armors out there, but with the switch going away from demon armor, yeah, I think more people are going to start clapping off cooldown. I think that will start to happen. So the next part is basically this is really simple, right? There's no perfect way. Like that's the biggest thing is there's no perfect way. Every single style of playing can be countered, right? What you need to do is make sure you're not forcing an unnatural style on yourself or on your Zerg, right? You need to stop thinking about what is meta and what is it that other people that are winning are doing. Because if you just copy them, you're not going to understand the reasons why they do what they do, right? And if you don't understand the reasons why they do what they do, then you're not going to be able to effectively use their composition or their meta or their whatever, right? So you are better off to just look at what you believe to be good right now. Like they just changed the W for the swords, right? They just changed the W for the swords, and I'm telling you guys right now, Clarent Blade as a bruiser type weapon is going to be amazing. Okay, like here's the thing. I don't know how long until people pick it up. I have no idea how long until people are going to be like, yeah, that's something I should go with, right? Like I have no idea. It's probably going to take a long time. But I'm telling you guys, that shit is gonna be really strong because of the DPS output that it has. It's just gonna be amazing. Halberd continues to be really good. It's still very, very strong. But again, people don't really look at that, right? So basically what I'm saying is stop falling under the things that everybody's doing. Start looking at the weapons in the game as if it's your first day playing the game. Because when it was your first day playing the game, you went and looked at every single weapon and you read every single weapon, every single E, every single whatever. And even now you think, oh no, I don't need to read them because I know what they do. No, you don't know exactly what they do. Because if you don't understand every part of every weapon, then you don't actually know the potential that certain weapons have, right? I talked about Enigmatic being great for a very long time. And it wasn't picked up for years. And then suddenly everybody's picking up Enigmatic. It's like, oh my God, Enigmatic's amazing. And it's like, yeah, like it's been amazing the whole time, right? To find these kind of niche weapons that are actually extremely important to a ZvZ and that can actually entirely win you fights, you have to be able to venture out. You have to be able to look at weapons objectively and don't just be like, oh, nobody uses that. Like another one is Dawnsong. A lot of people, I don't know why, they're just like, oh yeah, no, Dawnsong's trash. Dawnsong is not that great. It's like, dude, Dawnsong's amazing. It's amazing. The damage it does is not amazing itself, but the fact that you can reduce the healing of the people in a very large AoE area, right? That's huge, man. And people don't run Dawnsong. It's like, why wouldn't you run Dawnsong, right? Dawnsong is extremely, extremely good, but the thing is, a lot of the meta right now, again, it's melee, right? So then Dawnsong doesn't really work with melee meta, right? But that doesn't mean that Dawnsong is not good. It just means that the people at the top who run melee compositions don't use it because it doesn't work with their composition. But it doesn't mean it doesn't work with yours. If you run a primarily ranged composition, Zerg, and guess what, man? Dawnsong's gonna be really good for you. Now, I'm not saying you should run a lot of them. I'm saying like, you know, a couple ones per Zerg, right? Like that's it. Like just maybe kind of treat it like a damnation, right? Like you have a few of them and that's it. That's exactly what Dawnsong could be, right? The same thing again, Clarion, Halberd, Siegebow. I don't understand. People are so like against Siegebow still. Siegebow is amazing, right? But because it's not meta, people are like, they're just not bringing it back. And they even did the what is it called? The phase scale hat? Is that what it's called? The phase scale hat? The new hat? Like phase scale hat, that shit's OP, dude. Like you're telling me that I can channel my entire fucking Siegebow E without being interrupted at all. Or I can channel my Brimstone without ever being interrupted. Jesus Christ, bro. Like phase scale hat is OP. But even that doesn't bring back the Siegebow. I have no idea what's going to make people understand that, you know, these weapons have a lot of value. Yeah. Thank you, Star-Lord. Yeah. Latorian, how is Evensong now? Is it limited to 5 people yet? I don't know exactly. That's the truth. I don't know exactly, but I heard that it is only for 5 people. That the Evensong is only for 5 people. But even if... Actually, I think I read it and it does say 5. I think I read it and it does say 5. The thing about Evensong is that it's a weapon that could be good. I personally tried it a couple times. It kind of felt clunky. That was the problem with Evensong. It's like you want to like drop the E, and it's kind of like the stand time and the time it takes to actually like drop that E. It's a little too long, right? Like if SBI were to remove like the stand time and shit, and they were just like make it an immediate cast, an immediate drop, then Evensong would be very powerful. Absolutely, would be very, very powerful. But even if it is just for 5 people, it would still be really good, right? So I don't know. Evensong is like in a weird place right now where it's just not useful enough to validate its use, right? So yeah, I mean, The last section is kind of just lead your own way, right? So you got to look at your caller's strengths and weaknesses. You gotta look at the Zerg composition that you have, and then you gotta match it with your caller's strengths and weaknesses, right? If your caller's really strong at like counter engaging, then play a Zerg. Make your Zerg play a counter engage type Zerg, right? It's just that simple. Here, give me 1 second. I'm gonna put another video here. Yeah, so you play the Zerg that works with your caller, that works with your players. Another thing too that you guys got to take advantage of is you gotta understand that certain players in your guild are just really fucking good at certain things, right? Like you might have a player in your guild that's like incredible at like, I don't fucking know, Infernal Scythe, right? And it's like, oh no, we don't run Infernal Scythe here. And it's like, why the fuck not, dude? If he's amazing with Infernal Scythe, let the fucker play with Infernal Scythe, right? Let him play with what he feels comfortable with, what he feels is gonna be amazing, right? Let him play with that, because guess what? That's gonna bring your Zerg a lot more value than if you stick to, oh, well, the meta is, right? And it's like, you don't even understand why the meta exists. You have no idea. Because you didn't create the meta, and since you didn't create the meta, you have no idea about all the little things that need to happen in order for that meta to work, right? And that's the thing, is we get stuck in this cycle of stupidity where we follow the leader and we follow what the best Zerg in the game is, or even worse, we follow what the best video editor in Albion does, right? Like somebody goes and like is really good at editing videos, and they make the sick ass videos that like look super cool, they sound great, and you're like, oh my god, look at all those claps, oh my god, we need to do what they're doing. And it's like, no, you don't. You need to understand why they're doing all those things, and then you need to realize whether or not your Zerg is compatible with that. Because your caller may not be compatible with that. Your players may not be compatible with that. Like, how are you going to run a Zerg that relies on like a frontline tanks, right? Like relies on the front line, establishing a front line and all that, right? Kind of like the pressure push style, right? How are you going to go and make and make a Zerg like that, right? When all your fucking tanks are dog shit, but your DPS is amazing. You have the best DPS in the fucking game, but your entire front line is shit. How are you going to go and be like, I'm going to run a composition that relies on my tanks? Why would you do that? It doesn't make any sense. But here's the problem. People don't look at these things. They look at, well, what's the meta? Well, what are those guys doing? Oh, we should just copy that. No. You got to think deeper about these things, right? You got to understand, what is it that makes your guild better? And what makes it that makes you better individually? Like, if you are the kind of player that you succeed when you're able to like be inside the enemy and just constantly keep doing damage, even if it's little damage, you're that's when you succeed the best. That's when you do your best. Then guess what? Play like a brawler type weapon. Or if you're the type of person that you succeed the most when you engage at a distance, right? Then pick like a fucking brimstone, something like that, right? You need to pay attention to the way you play. You need to pay attention to the way your Zerg plays, and it all needs to be in harmony, right? Also, there's another important part where you have to pay attention to the versatility of your Zerg's roles, right? Certain Zergs, you have like players that literally can play anything, right? And those players that can play anything, it's like very often people are like, oh, well, you can play healer, then you're gonna be healer forever. You're gonna be healer for the rest of your life. And it's like, listen, just because they can play healer doesn't mean that they can't be a better I don't know, Locust player, right? Maybe they're a really good fucking Locust player, but just because they can play healer at a standard level, you're like, oh no, you're stuck to healer, right? And it's like, that's wrong. Play on your Zerg's strengths, right? Now, the thing is people know these things, but they just don't do them. And that's the problem. And that's the main point of today's episodes, right? Is that people blindly follow the metas because they know it works for somebody else, and they know it doesn't work for them, but they don't feel like figuring out what would work for them. because they don't want to take the risk. But the truth is, you're going to get wiped on the field anyway. That's the truth. You're going to get wiped on the field anyway. So why not get wiped while trying out the strategies that you think will work for you, and then fine-tuning them and then getting better at that, versus just copying somebody else's strategy and then wondering, well, I don't know why it's working. Well, you don't know why it's working, and you're not going to find out why it's working because, simply said, it's not your strategy, right? It's not your strategy. Starlo says, man, I wish everyone listened to you. Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, right? It's like, this is exactly why I made this stream, right? Is to give the information that I've gained over the time to everybody as much as possible. But one thing I've learned with like teaching people this game is that a lot of times I tell people these things, and even though they sit there and they agree with me and they're like, yeah, shit, you're right, absolutely. 2 weeks later, they go back to doing exactly what the fuck they were doing before, right? And it's because changing your way is really hard, especially when you're blasted with everybody in the game telling you that you're wrong. That, oh, like you're saying, oh, I don't know, what's a random ass weapon? Fucking demonic, right? It's like, oh, demonic, yeah, since they made that change, demonic is amazing. It's great, right? And then everybody in the entire game is like, you're stupid. You're wrong. No, what? How dare you? And then because of that, you get shut down, and you're like, no, I'm not gonna go and like try it out. I'm not gonna go and play that. I'm not gonna go and figure that out. But then guess what? Somebody else in the game is gonna be looking at the demonic and being like, let me test this out. And it's gonna work for them. And then they're gonna be like, oh shit, this is amazing. And then suddenly it's gonna become meta. And then you're gonna sit there like, shit, man, I wish I had, seen this earlier. And it's like, you did. You just never gave yourself the chance to try it. That's the only problem, right? So with that is all of it. So basically that was the 2-part series, right, of the evolving metas. Like I said, this episode was a little shorter than the last one, but like I said, I'm always trying to shoot between like an hour and 2, right, per episode. And so essentially, like, some episodes are going to be a little bit shorter. Some episodes, I already know, some episodes are going to be like very close to 2 hours, right? But essentially, this is around the time that I'm taking up. And the main reason I'm doing the amount of time, like 1 to 2 hours, is because the truth is a lot of people don't have the time, nor do they have the fucking attention span to listen to anything more than like about an hour and a half, right? Like, let's face it, like, you don't want to sit there listening to something for so long. So yeah, so if anybody has any questions right now, you guys can ask in the chat or anything. And it doesn't have to be about what we talked about today, anything in general, right? I mean, like I said, we finished early today, so we have extra time. How does one teach drinks better? Drinks? No, you said drinks, bro. You said, I don't know, man. You gotta go to your local bar and shit. Actually, it's funny. Funny story. Before I answer your question, Dennis, the stream, the way it looks, I actually got the idea from because I made the whole stream and stuff, like the way it looks and stuff. I made it myself, right? I have no prior experience doing like digital stuff or anything like that, but I figured it out using this program Canva, right? It took a while to figure out, but I got it anyway. So the color scheme and like the neon lights and all that, like I got it from there's a university, Georgetown, right? Georgetown University. One day I was like close to it. I wasn't right at the school, but I was like very close to it. There was this one like Mexican like university bar type place, right? But like it was like this beautiful like brick building, right? And it had like these lights and the neon signs and everything, like kind of like old school-ish, right? And yeah, so I love the aesthetic, and it had this music, and it was like a place for like university students to go and hang out like after class and shit like that, right? So like it was like a hangout spot, and like even the music like you guys are listening to, like I tried to like kind of hit that same note with the music, right? Like I handpicked all the songs and shit that are on this list. There's like 70 some of them. And like basically I was trying to hit that vibe. Like I don't even remember what that restaurant is, but like it was real fun, man. Like you just walk in and it was like really nice, like the colors, the signs, the music. It was nice. So anyway, that's where I got that from. It was basically a like a restaurant bar type place. But yeah, so how does one teach D tanks better? I mean, the truth is, man, you can't really teach a specific role, right? Like I know that like you can focus on the teaching of that specific role and the things about that role, right? But the truth is before you're able to teach like somebody to go from being like a good disengaged tank to like an amazing disengaged tank or like a great disengaged tank, right? To take that next step, you have to go into what you're saying. It's like you're teaching them specifics, right? But to take an average disengaged tank and turn them into a good disengaged tank, you first need to teach them the game. And it might be like, oh, well, this guy's been playing for a year or two. And it's like, it doesn't matter, because if they don't understand the concepts of the game, right? Like a lot of the concepts that I talked about earlier were like, you know, like the ridges and how that affects like clumping and stuff, right? Things like the walls or the hills or the angles, things like that, right? They may know about them, but it doesn't mean that they understand how influential those things are. And to be able to point out those individual little details to them, like in a video, reviewing it with them, right? That's gonna kind of open up their mind and be like, oh fuck, now I see the entire like ZvZ, right, as a totally different thing. It's no longer I'm focused on the enemy characters and the way they move around, but now I'm looking at the enemy characters in the ground that they're standing in. What trees are next to them, what ridges, what hills, what chokes, what rivers, right? And then suddenly it gives you a better idea of what the enemy's gonna do. Because if there's one choke behind them and you're pushing them, there's only one way they're gonna go, and it's in that choke. So if you're a disengaged tank, you see that early. You're like, the enemy's like 2 screens away from that choke, and you see it. You're like, okay, I'm gonna start walking to that choke. And it's like, maybe that means that you're walking away from the enemy Zerg a little bit, but you're walking to their inevitable conclusion, right? They're gonna get to that choke. But how do you teach that? Well, you teach it by basically making sure that they understand how to view the field as opposed to view the enemy. You need to first view the field and then view the enemy on the field, as opposed to view the enemy and that's it, right? I know that's like really complex like way of explaining it, but I mean that's really what it is. After they understand those nuances, they become a good tank, right? When they become a good tank and you want to turn them into like the best tank or like the amazing tank, the top of the line tank, right? Then you start focusing on the very, very minute details that, you know, you focus on, like exactly how they move in the Zerg, right? Like exactly what direction they like, oh, you stood right here when you should have like stood literally like 3 meters to the east or something, right? Like that's when you focus on those very tiny details. But first you got to open up their you got to open up their mind about the game, right? You can't just focus. Any episode about the new castles? Yeah, the new castles do like they're basically the same. No, I don't have any episodes specifically about castles. But I do talk a lot about castles, especially when I talk about there's an episode, I forgot the name of the episode. You guys can check it out if you guys scroll down. But there's one of the episodes that says like ranged warfare, some shit like that. Or like ranged DPS, stuff like that. I think there's like 2 or 3 episodes. Anyway, I focus a lot on castles because it's a very easy way to compare that, right? Because with ranged DPS, you can shoot over walls, and it's most evident how important it is to shoot over walls in like a castle or territory scenario. So yeah, but like talking about specifically like the castles and like the layouts and stuff like that, no. I will be talking about. There is an episode that's on the list. It's just not on the schedule yet. So I'm talking like after May. Like we're looking like June, maybe July, right? Time frame. I'm gonna make some episodes that are gonna be about how to siege a territory, right? And I'll probably end up adding an episode about how to siege a castle as well, right? So that's definitely coming, but it's not coming anytime soon. Like I said in the previous episodes, I want to make sure I stay broad, and then I kind of work my way in, right? And so like talking specifically about castles, that's a little closer in than I want to look at right now. Then it says, yeah, so many D-tanks almost fetishize dying for a good stop. Yeah, I mean, because people want highlights, right? That's all it is. I mean, people just love the fucking highlights. But the thing is like, highlights don't win fights. Like, actually, I'll show you guys in a minute right now. Let me just go through this. But I'll show you guys in a minute the fight at 21 UTC. I'm going to show you guys one thing that I recorded in that fight. That it's so important, right? You'll see. Give me a second. And nice. All right. Yeah. So, yeah, I have it. I'll be able to put it up. Let me see. What would I have to do? Here, I'm gonna change the screen for a second. Yeah. And I'm gonna show you guys something about something that happened today in one of the fights with Terra and Triple X. And again, if you guys have any questions right now, you guys can drop them in, and I'll reply to them in a second. All right. Let's go to the big one, actually. Yeah. All right. So, so in this, actually, I'm gonna stop the music for a minute. Let you guys listen.
Come on, twist it. Come on.
So it was the second fight. Yeah, right around here, I think.
I'm ready. I'm literally waiting here.
Yeah. All right. So here, Triple X is pulling back, right? Triple X is pulling back. So I'm gonna just give you guys the rundown here. So Terra's to the northwest here, right? Triple X is down on the southeast here against the wall, and they're pulling away from a choke that they were on the far southwest. Here you can see like there's a little choke. I don't know if you guys can see it on the stream or not, but there's a little choke that they're pulling away because on the other side of that choke, southwest, like deep southwest of us, is Manga, right? And so Terra and Manga, we got to that choke, and Triple X was there. And so Terra went around the north side, and then we're coming along this side. So it made them pull off, right? So as they're pulling off, look at what, actually, I can even pull it back even more. Look at what happens, right? So like I'm walking over here, and why am I walking over here? Actually, look, I can even pull it even further back to show you guys even better. So this is the choke, right? This is the choke.
Come on.
Archie south of us.
Actually, no. That's the choke right here. There's a choke there. There's a choke there, right? And if you guys see, like, this is literally what I was talking about, Dennis, actually, where it's like you if you understand the ground, you understand the next logical step, right? And this is how you teach D-tanks, right? Like, but not only D-tanks, like this is everybody, and this is like literally every single player can do this. Look, I opened up my mini map super quick, right? And I see what's going on. Oh, there's a choke here. Okay, so inevitably, we're gonna have to go around, right? So look, and again, I don't have a sprint. I run guardian boots. I don't have a sprint, but look, I'm at the front.
Come north when you come up. Come north.
So I see it. Turn on the next, and I kind of wait here a little bit to see what they're gonna do, and they're starting to walk south. That tells me something, right? They're walking south, so that tells me something. That tells me that they're getting ready to turn on that choke, which means what? We are either going to counter on the choke or we're going to go around. But I know that Manga's to our southeast. So then Manga's going to be able to hold that. We are definitely going north. But I had to hang around for a second to make sure before I actually went around for no reason. Next choke on the second choke.
Come northwest to me. Come northwest to me.
So now look again.
You
I'm at the
piece
very
of
front,
shit.
right? I'm at the very front again, and like even the collar's right here, right? And like we're coming over here. We're going around this way.
North, we're going.
Now I'm gonna turn off the comms for a second because I don't know if there's anything that shouldn't be said. But yeah, so look at this, right? Right off the bat, I'm at the front, right? And right off the bat, actually, I'm gonna put the music back on so it's not like dead silence. I like music, man. So right off the bat, I see this, right? And here's the thing, right? Most tanks, and this is the difference, and you know, I'm not tooting my own horn, but I guess I am, right? But this is the difference between a good tank and a great tank. This is the difference between tanks who do their job well and the best of the best in the game, right? I'm up here in the front, and there's one tank and there's one DPS on my screen. I know the enemy's southeast. So what do? I mean, realistically, I should just walk past, right? That's the truth. I should just walk past. That's what 99% of the game will do. They'll just walk past, right? But instead, what do? I snare charge him, and then I'm already popping my E to silence him. Why? Because I know that he's gonna try to stop my Zerg. So then I pop my E, but he uses his E faster than me, right? So he pops his first E. I silence him, and now he has a couple seconds before he can use his E on the rest of my Zerg, allowing my Zerg to walk east. This shit right here does not make highlight reels, man. But this shit right here is literally what makes an entire Zerg win a fight versus lose a fight. And it gets even better. I'll show you guys even more. So look, he's just standing there like a fucking idiot, and the frontline tanks just walk through, right? Now imagine if this tank over here stunned him right after I silenced him, right? But no, they didn't do it, right? And so then he gets his second one, right? But at least it's late, and it's not in the best position he wanted, right? And now look at the distance. We're literally one screen away from the enemy, right? When he would have preferred to kind of like walk north and then use his E back there. But instead he has to use it here, closer to his guys. And that's all because of what I did, right? Now, keeping it going, I'm walking in and I'm walking inside of the enemy, right? Why do I feel comfortable to walk inside the enemy? Because I know they're not going to engage on 3 of us. When the entire Zerg is flanking them, they're not going to engage on 3 of us. So I feel confident. I'm like, I can walk inside of you. What the fuck are you going to do about it? Nothing. You can do nothing about it. So I'm exploiting that. And by me just showing the enemy, because here's the enemy caller, right? Fordo City, that's Africa. So by me walking into the enemy like this, I'm basically showing the enemy, I don't give a fuck about your front line, right? And what that does, it makes them be like, oh shit, we're in danger. But they already knew they were in danger. That's why they were pulling away from that choke. But the fact that we are able to just walk into them, it makes them think twice. And just that making them think twice adds a split second more, where it allows your Zerg to do even more things. Watch. See that? Now they start walking east. All because why? Because I walked closer to them. Realistically, it would have been better if they walked north and engaged us west. But because we just walked into them, now they're walking east. And now I'm walking inside of them, right? And now what do I see? Wall here. And remember what I said, right? Little things matter, right? Look at these 2 trees. Nobody's walking between them. Only 2 guys. Instead, what are people doing? They're walking west of the 2 trees, but you can walk through them, but they don't. They walk west of the trees, clumping on the northwest, and they walk east of the trees, clumping on the southeast. That's just what people do. Again, remember, this is what I talked about earlier. Little fucking obstacles matter. And look at how clumped they get right here. Because they see a tree, they think that the tree's fat as fuck or something. They decide to walk all the way over here instead of just walk right next to it. So then I go in a snare charge. Again, this doesn't make highlight reels, right? And this is what you guys got to teach members, man. Players who just use their Q, even like a DPS, right? They use a Q, they use a W. That's the shit that wins fights, man. Right? But they don't make it into highlight reels because this will never make it into a highlight reel. And watch, I root people, right? I walk and I and I see them popping sprints up here, so I use my E on these guys to make sure I purge their sprints. What am I doing? Effectively, I clumped all of these fucking guys. Now, they were already clumped, but I made sure they stayed clumped, didn't I? Right? I already used my E, I used my W, and I'll tell you, there's no call to use any of that right now. There's no call. This is just me doing what I know I need to do. And now, look at that. They walk right into the engage that's coming in from here, and the majority of our guys are still here, but we have enough engage here for this, right? That's it. Fight's over. Like, fight's over after this. Like, I mean, they try to turn around at some point, but like they don't do anything, right? So, oh, I don't know what happened, right? So that's essentially what I'm talking about, right? Let me switch it back. Give me a second here. There it is. So yeah, so that's essentially what I'm talking about, right? The only reason I was able to do all those little things that will never make it into highlight reels is simply because I understand the terrain. That's all it is. And this is why I have an episode literally called like fucking understanding the terrain or some shit like that, right? Because terrain is so important to the game, but so many people don't pay attention to it, right? Let me read up these messages here. Do you think Grove is a little overplayed, and do you think Great Arcane could be a good stopper? Here's the problem with Great Arcane. The E is good. As it is right now, right? As it is right now, after all the changes and everything. The Great Arcane E is good. But the problem with Great Arcane is its Q and W. Think about it. The Q is a silence. Okay, that works. That's fine. No problem. But what's the W? What are you going to run on the W? Beam, that doesn't make sense. Like, if you're playing a disengage type role, you're not going to be beaming, right? That's the truth. You're not going to be beaming. Cleanse, okay, but that's not disengage, right? How does cleansing help disengage? I mean, you can argue that, oh, well, like, people don't get hit now. Yeah, but if you're looking at the fucking enemy to stop them, like, motherfucker, like, you're not a chameleon. You can't look with your other eye at your Zerg and look where a fucking cleanse needs to be, right? So I think that using Great Arcane as a disengage tank, it's not bad, but it certainly splits its usage, right? It's not a pure like disengage type thing. It's kind of like in the middle, and those kind of middle weapons, they don't really work, right? At least they haven't in history. I mean, I've seen some really good stops with Great Arcane, man. I really have, but I don't know if it's like actually viable, you know? In first position, an Icicle would be awesome, plus Duskweaver armor. Yeah. Fur was the tank that at the very start, right? So, yeah, an Icicle there would have been really good, right? But no matter what, I mean, even a Grail Seeker there was good, right? A Grail Seeker, like what he had was good for that, absolutely. But, you know, now just imagine if I hadn't silenced him. If I hadn't silenced them for those 2 seconds, I don't think we would have caught that clump on the wall northeast, right? Because you saw how far back our guys were to the west, and only a few guys were to the northwest, and those are the guys that caught them. Those are the guys that essentially got through because I silenced the dude for 2 seconds. Like, it's huge, but again, it'll never make it to fucking highlights. Using brain. Yeah, I mean, you're right, Katheria. That's all it is using your brain. But a lot of people turn off their brains in ZvZs, man. Yeah, Icicle, Duskweaver is cracked. Yeah, I mean, Duskweaver armor is really good, man. It's really, really good. I don't like that they kind of you can't overlap them, right? Like if they're, you know, if they're within a certain radius, like you basically destroy the other one. I don't really like that, but Duskweaver armor is still really good. In my opinion, it's one of the best armors right now. It's just not used too often because, again, it hasn't been adopted into the meta, and people are waiting for people to tell them that it's good. People are waiting for acknowledgement before they actually just be like, yeah, I have to run Duskweaver with every Icicle. I have to run Duskweaver with every Grail Seeker. Like, that's just, honestly, that's the way it should be. You can run Mimic on the W and have a ring. Yeah, but I mean, like, that's not super reliable, right? I know that there are a lot of like issues with the Mimic, with the W. It's not super reliable, right? And then to go walking around looking for a fucking Grove Keeper to copy a ring from all the time is, I don't know, Beth. I don't know. I mean, it could be good. Again, I'm not saying that Great Arcane is not good as a stopper, as a D tank. I'm not saying it's not good. I'm saying there are better options. That's all it is. There are better options, right? And when there are better, clear-cut options, why would you stick to the options that you know are not, as good, right? But yeah. All right. Any last questions or anything before we close it up? I'm gonna give you guys a few seconds because I know there's a delay on this stream. All right, so on Monday, the next stream is gonna be on Monday at 00 UTC. Today's Saturday. I know that some people are in EU. It's like, I think it's Sunday for you guys, but anyway, for me it's Saturday. So 2 days from now, it'll be Monday, and we'll do the next stream. That's gonna be the VOD review stream. So actually, basically what we did right now, like that little clip that I kind of explained some stuff, right? That's basically what we're going to be doing, but with a full-length video with, looking at basically every part of that video, right? Not just like looking at one specific aspect of it. So that's going to be the whole stream on Monday. If you guys have a video that you would like for me to review on the stream, go ahead and post it in the Discord in the videos tab. I will take a look at all those videos and see which ones we use. If you guys don't post any videos there, then I'm gonna find whatever video is good to review from like the last week that I can find on YouTube and stuff. There's plenty of videos, so it's up to you guys. I know that some of you guys are kind of shy. You don't want to get blasted on a fucking stream about all your mistakes, but hey, that's how you learn, right? And that's how other people will learn as well. So, all right. Yeah, thank you guys for showing up. Make sure you guys follow, yeah, because I like seeing all the follows. It makes me happy. Puts a smile on my face. All right, I'll see you guys later. Thank you guys for watching.
I'm falling down to obscurity. Don't let me ever be this alone. I'm falling. Shouldn't be trusting me, I could be making it all